convene this meeting. This June 23rd, 2020 electronic regular meeting of the Fairfax County School Board will come to order. I will take a roll call. Dr. Anderson. Dr. Anderson, we need to hear you, please.
I'm here. Sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Cohen.
Here.
Ms. Derenak Kofax.
Here.
Mr. Frisch.
Madam Chair, I believe Ms. Pekarsky and Mr. Frisch thought we had another link, so they are trying to come back.
Well, that's very good. I'll wait for them. Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Ms. McLaughlin.
Here.
Ms. Marin. Ms. Omesh.
Here.
Ms. Pekarsky.
Thank you, I'm here.
Ms. Sizemore-Heiser.
I'm here.
Ms. Tolan.
I'm here.
Ms. Boateng. Mr. Frisch.
I'm here.
Ms. Keys-Gamarra.
Here.
Great. So please rise, and since Ms. Boateng is not present, I will ask Ms. Derenak Kofax to lead us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Derenak Kofax. I now call on you for a motion for the consideration of renaming Robert E. Lee High School.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. I move that the board vote to proceed with the name change for Robert E. Lee High School.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Ms. Derenak Kofax, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would. I want to thank everyone who came out to our community meeting that was held on March 11th, and also to all those who spoke at last night's public hearing on this topic. Ms. Keys-Gamarra and I brought to our board via a forum process the idea to consider renaming Robert E. Lee High School on February 6th of this year. I stated at that time it was imperative that this process be conducted with transparency and fidelity, and I believe it has been. For reference, the conversation actually began with an earlier forum topic a year prior to this February, in February of 2019, when I asked the board to consider supporting in a transparent and comprehensive way the criteria by which FCPS can name or rename schools appropriately. This forum asked for a work session, and it stated that we recognized that Confederate values are not ones that align with our community. I asked for the superintendent at that time to provide to the board via work sessions schools named after Confederate soldiers, schools named after individuals with Confederate ties, dates that each school was named or renamed, and the reason and history for the name choice. Our previous board, along with staff, took the time to properly revise our naming policy and regulations, as well as conduct a review of schools that are named after Confederate soldiers and individuals with Confederate ties. Again, this process started in early 2019. And while this process took longer than some had hoped, it does take time to listen to the community. I started the conversations with students at Lee High School after our work sessions were complete and our policy and regulations were revised and in place. At that time, the student group interested in starting the name change felt that they simply wanted to drop Robert E. and keep Lee. They had a saying, "We are family," and they shared with me that they took great pride in that saying. But I was also hearing from a broader community. And I thought that this might not be the best solution. And so conversation had to continue. We needed more consensus. For it was and always has been my strong desire not to create divisions in the community that we had witnessed during the name change for Justice High School. So in early part of this year, I believe the community was ready. And on February 6th, as I stated, I brought with Ms. Karen Keys-Gamarra a forum topic based upon our caring culture for the board to consider renaming Robert E. Lee High School. As I stated then, I state again, the Confederate values are ones that do not align with our community. I have seen the pain and the hurt that these names have inflicted on friends and colleagues and community members. Our schools need to be places where all students, staff, and members of the community who walk through the door feel safe and supported. And in accordance with our policy, it was on our agenda as a new business item on February 20th. There was a 1-month public comment period that was scheduled from February 21st to March 1st. We had our first community meeting at the Lee High School cafeteria on March 11th, and on March 13th, our schools closed due to the COVID pandemic. This process was scheduled to end by June 18th. We are now 1 month behind schedule. But even during this pandemic, this board added several meetings, and I thank you, my colleagues, for supporting me in that, to enable our schedule to have a resolution prior to the start of the next school year. The work was done. The work 2 different boards have done will now enable a much quicker resolution when other name changes are being considered. In light of where we are in our country and in our community, for these changes that must occur to help heal the wounds caused by racism, this process may need additional adjustments, but any changes that would be made would continue to be both transparent and give a voice to the public. So my colleagues, today, I ask for your support based upon what we have heard in the community meetings and the public hearings and from the broader community to proceed with changing the name of Robert E. Lee High School. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Derenak Kofax. Ms. Keys-Gamarra, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, I thank Ms. Derenak Kofax for giving us that procedural history, and I know how important it is to make sure that we are indeed respectful of due process and that we are respecting the voices of our constituents. But today, I also gladly second this motion because these names, as we have said before, do not recognize and fully value the members of our community, our full community. The Confederacy rose at a time when our country was divided and when one side declared war and said that we have the right to devalue human beings for profit. The name on Robert E. Lee and what he stood for, what he fought for, and even the words that he said that failed to recognize the loving families that I know, simply should have never adorned Fairfax County schools. I want our students to know that we know, I believe this board knows, that placing a name like that on our schools after the passage of the Brown versus Board of Education in defiance of the desegregation order was wrong now, and it should have been removed a very long time ago. It represents our failure to go back and truly respect the Constitution of the United States of America. It represents our failure to truly recognize our neighbors and to respect their humanities. It represents the struggles in our history that we never really stopped to truly eradicate. And I think that it is fitting in this time in our history, this particular time, where we as a nation have grown more intolerant of systemic racism, to remove this name and any other such name that does not respect who we are. And so I gladly support this motion. I say that it is the very least that we can do. And I pledge, along with my colleagues, I believe, to go forward and to do everything that we can to eradicate the remnants of systemic racism and to make sure that we truly work for the future and to create a community that supports all of our neighbors. I proudly say, as a mother of 3 young men who look a lot like me, that not only do their lives matter, Black lives matter, and we want all of our students to understand that we stand with them in this struggle until we respect every single human being in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Do I have anybody else who would like to speak to this motion? Yes, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you so much, and I super appreciate my colleagues, Ms. Derenak Kofax and Ms. Keys-Gamarra. They're bringing this up and their words that they spoke to it. I just want to say I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, where the Confederacy never seemed to surrender. The ghosts of Confederate soldiers and battlefields loomed larger than life. And to this day, I could still tell you that April 26th is Confederate Memorial Day because we had it off from school every year, and it was a state holiday for all of our state workers. My husband and I moved here nearly 20 years ago so that our kids would have a very different experience than we did. I was shocked when my kids began their journey in FCPS to learn that in public school, somehow we had not left those symbols of bigotry and hate behind in small town Georgia. It is past time for a change, past time to move forward together. But to do that, we will have to go back for a bit and spend money and time to make sure that our school names reflect who we are as a community and as a school system. We must do better by all our students, staff, and their families in FCPS. And I'm excited to be part of making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Mr. Frisch.
Sorry about that. I'm glad we are finally voting to rename Lee High School, and I support doing exactly that for other schools that are named in honor of the racist vestiges of our past. While school names and symbols certainly matter, they matter a great deal. They are low-hanging fruit, as many students reminded us in our public hearing. The school board must also tackle discipline disparities, access to advanced academics, TJ admissions, the lack of diversity in our curriculum and staff, and so many other issues where we fall short. The only way to tackle the scourge of systemic racism is with systemic change. In our strategic plan, we commit to fostering a responsive, caring, and inclusive culture where all feel valued and hopeful. We cannot live up to that standard if we force students to attend schools named in honor of the Confederacy, especially as we seek to combat racism in our present. In other words, a school system that honors the Confederacy and fails to address systemic racism and generations of inequity in other areas cannot honor Black lives. We owe it to our students, staff, communities to take decisive action and demonstrate the sense of urgency that these and other issues deserve. I may have only been elected to this school board a few months ago, but it is my responsibility, it's all of our responsibilities, to push harder for more timely action wherever humanly possible. The school board can only do better, and I hope everyone out there, our Fairfax County residents, will never let us forget it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. Ms. McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to thank both my colleagues, Tammy Derenak Kofax and Ms. Karen Keys-Gamarra for bringing this motion to the board and to the public. As someone who resided on the prior board when we went through this with the justice renaming, one of the things that Ms. Kofax and I very much wanted to see was that any future renamings would be done in a manner that the public knew that we were following our policies and practices, and so that there would be trust and transparency in how we reach there. As someone with a degree in American history, during my time on the board, whenever we have spoken about these schools, I have always questioned and suggested that it is not appropriate to have schools named after Confederate gentlemen, ever. And I grew up in Northern California, and it's been an eye-opening experience to live in the Commonwealth of Virginia in my adult years. All that said, what is so important is that this prior board did set up a much more transparent process so that the board would be positioned to finally take down names like this. And again, I want to thank all of the people who came out yesterday, who brought their passionate voices. I want to reassure them that the prior board, as well as this board, has certainly recognized that Robert E. Lee does not deserve to be honored on a school building. He never was appropriate back in 1960s when this decision was made. And now the board is positioned to take the right decision and remove that name from this building. I fully support that decision. And most importantly, I look forward to the many more steps that this board is committed to taking to closing the equity and opportunity gaps in our school system and in our communities, to be leaders in that vein. But most importantly, to what Ms. Derenak-Kofax said, how we do that together as leaders so that we can have this shared passion and commitment matters as well. So I'm pleased to be working with my colleagues on this and appreciate all the hard work behind it. And finally, I would like to say to Kimberly Boateng, who's been our capable student on the board, I know that you have brought a very special and passionate voice to this, and you have done your community very proud in your words and passion, but never doubt for a moment that this board wasn't right there behind you and wanting to see this change happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Sizemore-Heiser?
Thank you, and I will try not to take too long. I'm fully in support of this name change as well, and I fully agree with what my colleagues have said who've come before me, so I will not repeat their points. I just wanted to sort of throw out there as well that some of the comments I hear from people is talking about, ignoring our history and we can't change names because we're not teaching history. And I would just want to posit that teaching history can still happen without celebrating those who work to enslave us or so I do not think of this as teaching history. And in fact, when I was sworn in on a book that when I discovered it in college blew my mind. And I would highly encourage everybody out there to read this book. It's called A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And it shows the history of people in the way we often don't get taught it in our schools. And so I think in addition to changing the names, we need to look at the work that we started with the forum topic that Ms. Corbett-Sanders brought in February about looking at our curriculum and looking how do we teach our history? How do we teach our students so that we're teaching a full picture of our history, of all of our cultures, and teaching respect and inclusion for all. So I just wanted to say I'm fully in support, but this is just one step of many that I look forward to taking with my colleagues in making our schools inclusive and welcoming.
Thank you, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser. Ms. Amish?
Thank you. And I know we try to keep our meetings efficient, but this one really is a moment to pause and to reflect really on the momentous historic moment that this is, to correct the wrongs of our past. For those who may not have felt the same level of understanding or who may still want to be brought along with us to understand why this is so important. And perhaps for those who didn't feel the same level of urgency, I want to thank my colleagues, of course, Ms. Derenak-Kofax and Ms. Kizgamara for putting forth the forum topic that started this process. But again, the sense of urgency and the importance to this. And remembering that it was right here, and I said this in the forum, and I'll say this again for the public meeting, for those who didn't have the opportunity to hear, that this was a part of our history in Fairfax County, that there was a time in this county, in this country, right, that we accepted things like slavery were okay and that they were controversial topics. And then we move forward to the future where we have segregation, right? Where you have Black only, white only, and that was actually acceptable, even in this county. And Luther Jackson, the school where we meet, where hopefully soon we'll be back and meeting there, was the first Black high school because we actually had a situation where kids were separated depending on their race. And even after our country decided with a Supreme Court case that that was illegal, Virginia and Fairfax County continued to push that forward in a time of massive resistance where they illegally perpetuated racism, including these names. So to put that into context and to really remind ourselves that these things can be insidious, these things can be socially difficult to stand up against and to do the right thing. And so, you know, I'm glad to see this step as a board here being very bold and clear about where we stand symbolically and hopefully following up with action, you know, whether that's shaping narratives as some of my colleagues spoke about. You know, I challenge those who are listening, I mean, to really just think about what it's like to sit in a classroom, to sit through years of history, learning about stories that are not familiar, that are not relatable, but instead learning about, you know, the incredible accomplishments and achievements of others who may have been oppressors to you. I think it's worth asking ourselves, putting ourselves in those shoes and thinking of what it is that our children kind of endure and how we can correct those wrongs even through our history, whether it's leadership in our schools, right? Having kids who don't, you know, you can't be what you can't see, and having leadership from the top in our buildings and in our classrooms who can model for kids the diversity that we already know is reflected in this county. Achievement gaps, right? When we think that students, when kids are socialized early on to see certain barriers and to see that certain kids tend to succeed versus others, all of these are things that we need to tackle. And on the vein of low-hanging fruit, I hope that, you know, we look forward to additional name changes that reflect the values of our county. I look forward to seeing things like holiday recognitions that speak to what it means to really to show diversity and to value diversity, and to remember the intersectionality, that it is a choice for us to decide if we live in a county that stands up for this or not, right? And it's the steps that we take in making this personal. We refuse to have Fairfax County be a place that not only in symbols, but in action and implementation is, you know, to make sure that it's a place that welcomes everyone and that represents what we're proud of. And finally, for those who are concerned about, you know, costs of these kinds of things, this is the cost of racism, right? Whatever expense it's going to take for us to do this and correct these wrongs, racism has a cost, and that cost is financial too. So in looking ahead, I look forward to positive initiatives with my colleagues. Again, I thank Tammy and Karen for this step, and hope for many, many more that we can be courageous on moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Omesh. Ms. Marin?
Thank you. Just a moment. The context in which students learn and staff works matters. Names matter. And being able to change for the better is necessary for our survival as a community and our improvement as a community. We need to be comfortable with change and reflecting in our collective values and staking our claim to them. And, you know, I feel that this action is momentous, but I also feel, as was voiced at the public hearing, that this is not a time to rejoice in this action because it's long overdue. So I'm glad this action is happening among one of my first as a newly elected school board member, and I'm very eager to make this something that is extraordinary in a way, be very ordinary, because it should be a matter of practice that we remove symbols of hatred in our system, be them name, curriculum, training, discipline procedures. And I look forward to this, again, taking this low-hanging fruit, as Mr. Frisch said, and doing much more work to expand our view of our community and eradicate racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marin. Ms. Pekarsky?
Thank you, Ms. Corbett-Sanders. I'm really happy actually to follow my colleague, Ms. Marin, because I agree with her. This isn't so much a celebration as it is an easy way to right a long-standing wrong. The intent of naming this school and other schools after people who were willing to risk their life for the vile institution of slavery is a wrong that we cannot deny. And our children, our students, should not have to bear that burden, should not have to walk into schools and see those men, those names commemorated, not in our county. So I'm very happy to vote for this. And then I'm equally as excited to get to the very difficult issues that Mr. Frisch brought up, because we can never get to solutions for those issues until we get through these types of renaming. So thank you to Ms. Keys-Gamarra, and thank you to Ms. Dernak Koufax for leading this charge, as well as the community members who have long advocated for getting rid of these names.
Thank you, Ms. Pekarsky. Dr. Anderson.
I will be brief, as I believe that my colleagues have covered much of what is to be said. A couple of points that I do want to underscore is that representation matters, who we honor matters, but this is, again, as has been said, very low-hanging fruit. How do we move forward to the real and important work of increasing diversity, of having representation at all levels, as Ms. Omesh talked about, acceptance of diversity? How do we ensure that we are no longer having this conversation regarding TJ admissions, AP centers, and all of the other things that divide our community along these lines? It's not lost on me that when we had this conversation, that my colleagues, Ms. Dernak Koufax and Ms. Keys-Gamarra, brought this forum topic. It was Black History Month. It was in February. And now in June, we're at another moment in history, and we've seen that by all the marches and protests in the street. We've kind of come full circle over this topic, and I'm just so thrilled to support it. But more importantly, I am invigorated to move forward and to do the right work. So thank you very much, and I will be happy to support this, this motion.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Ms. Tolan?
Yes, hi. I was listening to Ms. McLaughlin. I was thinking, oh yes, I grew up in the North too. I grew up in Wisconsin. And I think, as I mentioned at our last meeting, I grew up marching in the civil rights movement with my mother in the streets of Milwaukee. And over the years, I've been heartbroken many times to see my fellow Americans not uphold the values that I grew up with and hold so dear. With recent events and unrest around our country, I feel naive to keep hoping that we are making progress in America, that racism is lessening, and that we really care deeply for one another. I marched alongside my mother 50 years ago and sang, "We shall overcome." But where are we today? I'm heartbroken with what is happening across our country, but ready to persistently stand up and work for what is right. Now I work with this board and with FCPS, and I applaud the educators and the work that they have done to stand up and provide resources to our parents, our students, our communities, to talk about race issues with our youngest citizens. Our young people are our hope. Kimberly, you are a great example. I'm going to miss you. And it's the young people that get me out of bed in the morning and make me inspired to lead my community with the values that I hold. I'm thrilled to work with FCPS and with this board to be sure the America that I aspire to, one where all humans are created or are treated with the dignity that they deserve, is the one that our children grow up to know. Thank you to my colleagues for moving this renaming of Robert E. Lee High School forward, and for taking this first step forward in lots of work that we need to do that has been outlined very nicely by colleagues that have spoken before me. I'm very happy to support this, this name change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tolan. And before I take the vote, I too would like to speak to this. In February, on February 6th, we began this process with the commitment to provide the opportunity to change the name in advance of the fall opening of the school off of Franconia Road. For those that suggest that we are rewriting our history, this is not rewriting history. It is a situation where we are actually writing history. To ensure that our history lessons accurately reflect the history of our country, which spans over 400 years since the first people were brought to this land in the state of Virginia against their will and were auctioned off. It is over 150 years since the Juneteenth Liberation Day that we celebrated just last week of June 19th, 1865, when the slaves were emancipated in the United States. And it's 150 years since July of 1870, when the state of Virginia incorporated into its constitution the right to a free public education for everybody. This is about making sure that that free public education is one that every student in our schools feels welcomed, treasured, valued, and knows that they can succeed because this school system does not discriminate based on your color. This is a transformative time for our community and our state and our country. Our children must have the opportunity to go inside doors of schools where the name is inspirational. Students should be made to feel valued and respected, and they need to be taught a history that reflects the true history of our country. This is important because if we do not teach the true history of our country, we are at risk of repeating the ills of the past. And so I am very happy to support this motion, and I am very happy to work with my colleagues to dig deeper into our processes and our system to ensure that the FCPS promise is realized by all of our students. And that means that every Black child who comes into our schools never has to question or shed a tear over what their diploma has written on its cover, which is what we heard so much about last night. So with that, I will call for the vote. The motion before us is to proceed with the name change for Robert E. Lee High School. All those in favor? I have Ms. Tolan, Ms. Derenak Kofax, Ms. Omesh, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Dr. Anderson, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Marin, and Ms. Corbett-Sanders. That is unanimous. The motion carries. The following are new business items. New business agenda items. There will not be a vote tonight on these items, but action is scheduled at a future meeting. I will read the new business item and then turn the microphone over to Dr. Brabrand. I call on Dr. Brabrand to make recommendations for the Lee High School renaming.
Thank you, Chairman Corbett-Sanders. Now that the school board has officially voted to proceed with the name change by policy and regulation, I am tasked as superintendent to bring to you my recommendations for a possible new name for Lee High School. I have 6 names to present to the school board this evening. They are the following. The first is John Lewis. John Lewis is a politician, author, and iconic civil rights activist. Born in 1940 in Troy, Alabama, Lewis was known as one of the big 6 leaders of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. His contributions to the movement are numerous and significant, including participating in the Freedom Rides in 1961, helping organize and speaking at the March on Washington in 1963, serving as chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and participating in other efforts that ultimately led to the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Congressman Lewis has received many honors for his work, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the NAACP's Spring Iron Medal, and the Lone JFK Profile and Courage Award for Lifetime Achievement. Congressman Lewis has served as the U.S. representative of Georgia's 5th Congressional District since 1986. John Lewis. The next name I have to present to the board tonight is Barack Obama. Barack Hussein Obama is the 44th President of the United States and the first African-American president. He was born in Hawaii in 1961 to a Kenyan father and American mother. He graduated from Columbia University and moved to Chicago to work as a community organizer in an underserved area on the city's far south side. While attending Harvard Law School, President Obama became the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review. After graduating, he taught at the University of Chicago and started his public service career. He served as Illinois State Senator and then the U.S. Senator from Illinois before being elected president on November 4, 2008. President Obama was named the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize laureate in October 2009, and he won a second presidential term in November 2012. Barack Obama. The third name I present tonight is Mildred Loving. Mildred Dolores Jeter Loving, or Jeter, was born in Mildred Loving. Mildred Dolores Jeter was born in 1939 in Caroline County, Virginia. She unintentionally played a pivotal role in the civil rights era after marrying Richard Loving, a white man, in 1958. At that time, Virginia law prohibited interracial marriage. The couple was arrested and sentenced to 1 year in jail. However, the sentence would be suspended if the Lovings moved or lived outside of Virginia. They relocated to Washington, D.C. and started a family. In 1963, Mildred contacted the Attorney General and began working with the ACLU at the AG's suggestion. After 4 years, the Supreme Court overturned the Lovings' criminal conviction and nullified laws against interracial marriage in Virginia, as well as 15 other states. Richard Loving died in 1975. Mildred Loving died in 2008. Mildred Loving. The next name I have to share with the board is Cesar Chavez. Cesar Estrada Chavez was a union leader and labor organizer. He was born in Arizona in 1927 to a Mexican-American family of migrant families and migrant farmers. After graduating the 8th grade, Chavez began working farms to provide for his family. He began to learn about farm workers' rights and how unions can help protect workers who were experiencing poor working conditions and unlivable wages. In 1952, Chavez started working for the community service organization, a Latino civil rights group. In 1962, Chavez co-founded the National Farm Workers Association to create awareness of the plight of migrant farmers. His tactics often included leading boycotts and nonviolent protests and going on personal hunger strikes. The National Farm Workers Association later became the union known as United Farm Workers. Chavez died in 1993, and in 1994, he was awarded the Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. Cesar Chavez. The fifth name I am recommending is Legacy. Legacy is a name brought forth by many of the students at the school from our community and school feedback. As many members of the board and community know, the last renaming, the school was named Justice, which was not any of the recommended names, but was a different name that pulled together the sentiment that existed in the other names shared. And it's clear that the students at Lee High School are going to leave a major legacy with them. And so I am sharing the name Legacy. I am also sharing a final name, Central Springfield. Many of our schools are named after geographic features in Fairfax County. Central Springfield is a geographic name that represents where the school is in the Springfield area. All of the suggested names received at the March 11th community meeting and received online are posted on the FCPS website. You can go to our website at www.fcps.edu. By regulation, the 30-day public comment period begins today on the renaming names. A community meeting will be held July 15th, a public hearing July 22nd, and a final vote by the school board on July 23rd. As you know, the school board has the final say on what the new name for the school will be. These are only my recommendations as per the regulation. You may consider my recommendations, or the school board has the power and authority to choose a different name. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brabrand. And I will repeat, the community will have the opportunity to discuss the superintendent's recommendations at a community meeting scheduled for July 15th, and a public hearing is scheduled for July 22nd. The board will take action on the superintendent's recommendations at the July 23rd meeting. Next on the agenda is superintendent matters, and I call on Dr. Brabrand.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I want to thank the board for our work earlier today to support our overall format for scenario 2 and scenario 3, with more choice for our families to choose a virtual online option, and more choice for our teachers to also have the opportunity to express the preference to teach online to meet that virtual demand from our students and families. I also thank the board today for your support of the placeholder amounts in our budget around our coronavirus reserve dollars and our CARES stimulus money to support things like PPE, additional T-SPEC and SBITs in our schools, and really helping provide additional interventions and supports for our students as they return in the fall. I appreciate your support today. I know we have far more communication to do with all of our stakeholders as we look at return to school. And I commit to you that we will continue to bring you regular updates and the additional details and information that you need to help work with me and our team to be ready for school in the fall. So thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to be here this evening and watch you all make history in this decision that you've made tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brabrand. Next on the agenda is board matters, and I call on Dr. Anderson.
Whew, that felt really good. I'm in a very good place right now, and I just want to relish in this moment. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, everyone. I wasn't expecting to be this emotional about it, because I was really heartened and say that, this is overdue and we should have done this a long time ago. But it's really settling with me right now, and clearly I'm emotional over it. So I'm looking forward to the next step where we can really honor someone who really deserves it, or even after our community, to move forward to change the name of Lee High School. I'm looking so forward to that opportunity. I'm going to stop there before it gets embarrassing. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Ms. Cohen?
Oh, Lord, you all know I don't need any excuse to cry. So I'm a firm believer that people are not to cry alone. But I'm also very excited. I know that today our return to school session ran understandably long. I'm glad we were able to get so much work done. I really do appreciate Dr. Brabrand and your LT team and every person. I know we had lots of staff members and principals and bus drivers and everybody who's been involved in it. And I am very appreciative. I think that we're getting in the right direction and look forward to learning more details about how we're gonna miraculously accomplish all of this. But I was disappointed that we didn't get to the forum topic. I'm looking forward to Thursday when we can begin some conversations that are really more holistic about racism and FCPS. I agree with my colleagues who said this is the beginning. This is low-hanging fruit. Let's take these steps, but then let's also look much more intentionally about how we really systematically have done a disservice, I think, to an awful lot of our kids. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. I very much appreciate my colleagues' support of getting us here, and looking forward to the next steps. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Ms. Darren Kovacs.
Yes, this is a good place to be. This feels good tonight. So thank you all for supporting us, getting us back on track in this last month so we could get this done prior to the start of the school year. I really do appreciate all of your willingness to work even harder during these difficult times. Ms. Cohen, I look forward to hearing your thoughts in your upcoming forum meeting, at your forum topic as well, on the issue of racism and how we can work to alleviate it in our schools and make all of our children feel welcome and supported. Today was a great moment right here, but we did have a work session, and we are working hard to continue to get reopening of schools plans. I appreciate the choice that's out there. We still have a little bit of work to do, and as everyone knows, we are the reason we are here is because we are still in a pandemic. Virginia has done things well. We have closed down. We have lowered the curve, I guess, as they say, and we need to continue that careful march as we open up our schools and make sure that everyone walking into our schools during the reopening plan feels safe and supported as well. So we will continue to have these conversations. Dr. Brabrand will continue to keep us moving forward. And regarding the process that we started tonight, I think a couple people have said a few times that the next meeting on this, the public comments will begin tonight. Dr. Brabrand's names were suggestions. We can look forward to hearing other suggestions as well. I appreciate his suggestions very much. And there will be a community meeting on July 15th. We're still figuring out the details of what that might look like, whether we will do it at Lee High School with proper social distancing in place or whether it will be virtual. So we will let you know soon, but we will take comments online until that community meeting on July 15th. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darren Kovacs. Mr. Frisch.
Thank you. I want to thank Tammy Darren Kovacs and Karen Keys-Gamarra for, making it possible for tonight to happen in terms of bringing this option for us to move things along. I look forward to joining all of my colleagues in the work that we have ahead of us. As far as distance learning goes, I know we still have a lot of work to do there. I've scheduled, since the closure, more than 100 hours of one-on-one Zoom meetings and phone calls and town halls to talk with Providence District families about not only distance learning back in March and April, but also the plans for the fall. And I look forward to continuing those conversations. As I've said to virtually everyone I've spoken with, there is no perfect solution to these problems. And it's going to be on all of us to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that the path forward is planned well and that we consider any contingency that may come and meet us. So if you'd like to have one of these Zoom meetings or phone calls with me, I encourage you to go to my official social media channels, Carl Frisch, FCPS, Twitter and Facebook, and you'll find a link where you can schedule one automatically for Zoom or the phone. And also be sure to sign up for my email newsletter as a school board. I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. Ms. Keys-Gamarra.
Coming. Thank you. I too am very, very grateful for this day. And I'm proud that we were able to do this, but I also am really, really proud of our student, Kimberly Boateng, who has used her skill to help keep us and get us on point. And so I want to thank you, Kimberly, for pushing us. And I want to apologize for the delays, not that they were anyone's fault, but, we did not need a delay, especially in a time like this. So I want to say that I'm truly sorry that there were delays, and that my hope is to move forward from here and to really, truly focus and take the acts of a determination and a caring culture to truly uproot the remnants of systemic racism that have impacted our school system for far too long. On that note, Kimberly will be joining me at a student town hall along with other current and former students to discuss what students want to talk about. I think that our students are looking at what's going on in the world, whether it's having to deal with social distancing or distance learning or not being able to have access in the way that they have, or even looking at the racial unrest in our nation. And I wanted to provide an opportunity for them to talk about that in a forum and give us an opportunity as some of the leaders of FCPS to really listen. So that will be tomorrow night at 7. And that link is available online on my Facebook or Twitter. So I look forward to that. And I look forward to, finishing this process. Oh, by the way, with respect to the town hall, there is no sign up required. We're going to be having a discussion, and I look forward to hearing from our young folks so that we can stay centered on the issues that really matter. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Ms. McLaughlin. We seem to have lost Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Marin.
Yes, hello. I feel like every day has been so full, it's hard to piece apart what has been happening in a period of time. I'm certainly really excited to be stepping forward with our return to school plan, as difficult as it is, as much as it has components that will be difficult for everyone. We have to make a decision, and I'm really glad that we are being productive and trying to do the best we can in this remarkable situation. I have been very busy responding to constituent emails and on social media and Facebook. All the moms groups I've been in all these years are really keeping up with them and hearing their comments. And so please know that it is difficult to always respond, but I am reading as much as I can. And, just like I'm trying to represent parents and students while I am a parent of students. So it's a good thing at times and a challenging at others. I want to share that I did get to go to some graduation events at a number of high schools that students in Hunter Mill attend, and each was really special and unique and had a very celebratory feel. So I hope that the students felt that way and the families felt celebrated in the accomplishment that has been achieved. And I also had the opportunity to sit on a call with a great organization in our community in Hunter Mill. It's an initiative rather called Rest in Opportunity Neighborhoods. And it was a meeting of the community leaders who are doing fabulous work to connect people to resources, led with Cornerstones, a wonderful organization, and county partners and other organizations and FCPS staff. So I'm very eager to continue those conversations and especially look at how we can continue building particular partnerships with our businesses who can help elevate our residents who are looking for education and employment and just being the best that they can be in their lives. I also was able to attend the pantry that's held at South Lakes High School, which is done through volunteer work, and an amazing need is seen, and we have a lot of needs. So again, this focus on ensuring that people have the resources, very basic things, is still really important for us to remember. And just mentioning two more things. One is that in an upcoming school board meeting, we'll be approving the calendar for the coming school year, and I serve on the calendar committee, and I'm very excited to see this come forward. One thing I will be asking for a motion for, and I hope my school board colleagues agree, is to change the Columbus Day holiday to Indigenous Peoples Day. And that's the result of advocacy I've heard, and again, in keeping with the work that we're trying to do here to be anti-racist in our community. And finally, this month is Pride Month, and we perhaps didn't get to give it as much attention as it deserves, but I'm very grateful to have such a diverse and wonderful community, and I certainly will keep working to protect and elevate all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Marin. I will say that we will be honoring Pride Month at Thursday's meeting. Mr. Frisch will be putting forth a resolution. So thank you for reminding everybody. Ms. Omage.
Ms. Chairwoman, Madam Chair, I'm so sorry. I have Megan McLaughlin on the phone. She was not able to reconnect, but she's ready to make her statement.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Ms. McLaughlin.
Oh, yes, thank you. The challenges of technology. I just wanted to share with my colleagues and Dr. Brabrand and the public during board matters that while I was very pleased with the progress we saw today in the fall return to school options being put on the table, I continue to believe that it is absolutely imperative that FCPS offer two options for choice. A choice for those families and employees that feel it is safest for their children to continue distance learning in the fall, and for those families and employees who feel ready to return to school under very stringent public health guidelines. But as the Virginia Commonwealth, as well as the nation, as well as Fairfax County, moves toward the various phases of reopening, it is important that we also ensure that one of our most valuable public institutions, and that is public education, is there and able to deliver the best education possible to our students. So I know there isn't time to go into detail here, but for those who are listening, it is also important that the school-age childcare that is run by the county and provides before and after school care for our families, that needs to be done in concert and in tandem with Fairfax County Public Schools. Many families in this county work and have young children and are relying on us to provide quality education as well as access to appropriate childcare options. So I remain committed to that. I also want to make sure that our superintendent understands how critical it is to remain nimble and flexible as the information and the data on COVID changes. This did not happen with our graduation plans. It is not happening with our early summer education plans, which are being done virtually right now. And so while I do appreciate that Dr. Brabrand did a wonderful job today conveying his commitment to being nimble and flexible, I do want to emphasize that it will be through this board working with him as partners that we have to honor that commitment to be nimble and flexible and strive toward having as many days in school for those who elect for that. And I believe it can be done. And being nimble means following and monitoring what other school divisions are doing, since Fairfax County is coming out early in this process. And I also want to make sure that families have a choice, that if they make a decision for the fall, they have an opportunity to come back into the spring. And I also want our teachers to know, most importantly, that my colleagues and I are very sensitive to what it means to ask you to wear two hats. That is not a best practice model. So I do hope we will also be looking at, for those who want to teach face-to-face, that will be the expectation. For those who want to teach virtually, that will be the expectation. And that we're also thinking about all the other employees who are affected by these plans. Please know that I, along with my colleagues, want to continue to hear from you and be as mindful as we can about making good choices. But we do have time. And if we need to delay opening for 1 to 2 weeks, I believe the state owes that to our employees and our families, and it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marin. Ms. Amash.
No, that was McLaughlin.
I'm sorry, Ms. McLaughlin, I apologize. Ms. Amash.
Yeah, I want to start by really thanking our staff for all their hard work and the community for having come out and spoke about, you know, what's happening moving ahead. It's actually an incredible blessing to have a community that's so engaged and invested in the success of our school system. And I hope that you all know that we were listening, carefully and really trying to make the best decisions here, and grateful to, gratitude really is by expressing names. So Dr. Brabrand, Dr. Ivy, Mr. Smith, Mr. Plattenberg, Ms. Burden, Ms. Johnson, Dr. Nixon, John Torrey, Dr. Presidio, all our region heads, Douglas Tyson, Nardis King, Becky Bainig, Fabio Zulaga, and Jay Pearson. I mean, the leadership team, you really have, obviously been putting in a lot, and we have to work together here in partnership, hopefully, to get this right. So that's really important to me to say. I've been spending a lot of time talking to some of our principals. I've had the pleasure of speaking to over 70 so far. I'm making my way through, since I did not have the pleasure of going to visit our schools this year, but we're all making it work in new ways. And it's been very informative and has opened my eyes to a lot of the considerations moving forward and being intentional about this. That's in terms of distance learning. In terms of where our county is headed and the decision that was made today, certainly moved and encouraged to continue being proactive. I would encourage folks to take a look at an Instagram page called Unheard Voices of FCPS. It's really opened my eyes, and I think it'll be a source of inspiration for all of us to better our system. I have started a number of working groups to brainstorm things that we can do on different fronts when it comes to equity in our system and being intentional about it. If you are interested or passionate about a particular angle, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am looking forward to what I know is going to be the SR&R conversation moving forward, and staff have been very helpful, and I've spent quite a bit of time trying to think through how we can be thoughtful about any potential changes. I know that the decision was delayed, right, which for the sake of the public, so folks know, because of some new updates, massive updates from the federal government that are being reviewed for us to make sure we're diligent about that. And finally, a couple things. As always, I've been live twice a week to try to make sure I answer your questions, to bring on guests that are helpful. So feel free to join us and ask questions in real time on Facebook with Kimberly Boateng, who has been a pleasure to have on and who's been a very helpful co-host. And Laura Jane and I will be doing a town hall with FEA, the Fairfax Education Association, on Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. And finally, we are looking towards finalizing appointments for the following year for our citizen advisory committees. I have been, I've been receiving recommendations from the community. If you have interest in serving on any of those, don't hesitate to reach out as well. Next week's going to be graduation for all our seniors. We're going to be watching you. We're excited to be proud. I'm going to be very proud, watching through all of those and seeing all the great things you've done and the statements you've been making. So that's all from me. You know how to find me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Omesh. Ms. Pekarsky.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody who has reached out to me, the many emails, the phone calls, the people who took the survey about Return to Learn. It is very obvious that our community holds education at the very top of their priorities. This is a seismic disruption in public education, unlike anything I have ever seen in my life. And everybody is trying to find their way, to come up with the solutions, to do the best for our kids. So thank you. I try very hard to answer all the emails. It may take me a while, but I will get there. I also, on a personal note, in addition to the many, many kids that we are celebrating graduating this year, my son graduated as well from Westfield High School, and he has been, his whole experience in Fairfax County Public Schools. We are very thankful for the education he received. He had the opportunity to be touched by some incredible educators. who he talks about, who have really shaped him. And I'm so thankful for that, and thankful for all the staff that stood outside in 90-degree weather to celebrate these kids. The ceremonies, at least for us, even for my hard-headed teen who didn't want to do it, felt very personal and very special, and we were able to celebrate him and friends. So thank you. That is it.
Thank you, Ms. Pekarsky. Ms. Sizemore-Heiser.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I just first wanted to just talk about how excited I am to be part of this historic vote to change the name of Lee High School. And this is, do not take this as a plug for any potential name, but I just wanted to share with you my Cesar Chavez stuffed animal doll that I've had right here. And so I don't know if you can see him. So, again, not a plug for any name, but I was very excited to see Cesar Chavez on the list of names. So just going to share that. But in all seriousness, I think this is something that is long overdue and a great first step of hopefully many steps this board will take to look at systemic racism in our schools, in our curriculum, and to make sure that a caring culture really means a caring culture for everyone where everybody's valued and respected. So I want to thank Ms. Darnett Koufax and Ms. Keys Gamara for bringing this forward, and my colleagues for supporting it. And I am looking forward to continuing the process for Lee and looking at our curriculum. Thank you, Ms. Cohen, for bringing your forum topic forward on Thursday. I look forward to talking to you about that, to really look at how we can root out racism. And so I appreciate that. We had a good return to school work session for the second time today. I want to thank Ms. Pekarsky for working with me to sort of help manage that meeting. And I want to thank my colleagues for all your wonderful questions. I know that there are lots of questions still to be answered and details to be worked out, but I'm glad to see greater flexibility for our families. And I just wanted to sort of say this about COVID. This is something that I've never seen and none of us have ever seen before. And because of COVID, the reality is that our whole world has changed. It's a community problem. We need community solutions. We need to work with our health department. We need to work with our board of supervisors to make sure we can provide the supports that we need. But things aren't going to be what they were before, and change is hard. And I think we all need to sort of adapt to that change and recognize that even while it's not what we had before, there may be some room for learning something new. This morning I was participating in the FCPS Foundation board meeting, and one of the board members, in talking to Dr. Brabrand about the work that our team has done in the spring, talked about creating muscle memory for our students to be able to know how to learn virtually. And I thought that was a great line, because as we move forward into a virtual 21st century workplace, this muscle memory, I think, is really important. So maybe we can look at that as a nugget. So I appreciate my colleagues' hard work on that. And just last, I just wanted to say, I'll be also holding my town hall on Monday, 7 to 8 with Dr. Anderson. And I look forward to hearing your questions and concerns and thoughts. I appreciate every single one of you reached out to me to ask about your questions, share your concerns. I did read all of them. Like my colleagues, am working to trying to respond, but please know I did read and take into account all of the stuff that you sent. And lastly, I just wanted to give a very brief update as to the foundation. They had this year an Access for All fund to deal with COVID, and I'm really proud to know we had 820 donations, $276,000, which included 750 individuals. So all of those who donated to the foundation that help supply food supplies, food, nutrition, technology, I just want to say thank you. We really appreciate it, and our families, thank you. So that is it. I hope to see you, and you can also sign up for my office hours, and I'll be sending out a newsletter with that information. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser. Ms. Tolan.
Yes, I do want to thank Ms. Sizemore-Heiser and Ms. Pekarsky for helping us through 2 return to learn work sessions. It was a lot of work, lots of big topics recently here with FCPS. On a return to school work, we're doing our best with the constraints that we have with COVID-19. And I'm thrilled that we have our families to work with us, as Ms. Pekarsky was saying. We need you to keep providing us information over the next months so that we can work together and do our best to meet everyone's needs. Happy that we have our email out, our return to school at fcps.edu. And glad that we'll be able to keep that open to the foreseeable future as we move through this process together. Looking forward to the first summary of those emails. I think that's coming to us maybe later this week. And I'm really looking forward to that because of all of the emails I've gotten from people that have included incredible inspirational and innovative ideas for moving forward. And I'm happy to have those compiled. Please keep those ideas coming as we do our best to aspire to, an educational environment that's safe, but very, very importantly, provides for our students learning that moves them forward through a robust curriculum that takes care of their academic needs, their social and emotional needs, and continues our work to teach portrait of a graduate skills. Very happy to work with my colleagues to create an FCPS community that welcomes all of our students. And I'm really, really proud of the students I heard over the last month speak and offer their personal stories in the Dreamsville School Town Hall about racism and at the student-sponsored Black Lives Matter protest, or not, I should say march in McLean. A huge thank you to our principals for starting this important work at the end of the school year and for acknowledging that this is only the start. I'm looking forward to working with all of you in the fall as we continue these efforts. Please subscribe to my newsletter and sign up for my office hours. And I'm really looking forward to our virtual graduation ceremonies next week. And I hope the school board videos included in those graduation ceremonies aren't too ridiculous. We did have lots of fun making them. I'm looking forward to the bloopers reel. Congratulations, class of 2020. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Tolan. I'm looking to see, Ms. Boateng was here a bit earlier, and I was going to take the chair's privilege to offer her the opportunity to speak. But unfortunately, I do not see her still logged in. But we will be celebrating Ms. Boateng on Thursday evening, and so please come ready to do so. She's been a wonderful contributor to the work of this board. Wanted to briefly talk about the excellent work that was presented to us today. Dr. Brabrand, we appreciate that you and your team listened with us to the 124,271 responses to the survey that was sent out to our families and students, to the 18,398 staff members who provided input to the survey, and to the close to 10,000 emails that were sent either directly to Dr. Brabrand in anticipation of his town hall last week or to each of us individually. We heard you, we're listening, we need to continue to hear from you. And thank you so much. I feel like the presentation that was, or the plan that was presented today, which was more of a concept than a full plan, which allows the choice to be in the hands of our students and families and staff members, is one that reflects the comments that everybody in the community provided. And so you can look forward to, in the very near future, getting an email from Dr. Brabrand asking for your expression of intent as to whether or not you plan on participating online or in person when we return to school. And so I think that is great progress today. And I know that this board looks forward to diving into the much more details that I know that Dr. Brabrand has committed to bringing to us. Additionally, before I close out tonight, I want to thank the South County Task Force, which has invited me to participate in their general meeting tomorrow night, where they will have a panel focused on anti-racist responses to inequities. They will be focusing on current discussions over inequities in healthcare, education, housing development, and criminal justice as applied to the Route 1 South County area. And so that will take place tomorrow evening from 7 to 8:30. And with that, I am going to adjourn this meeting. Everybody have a great evening. This meeting is now adjourned.
Bye.
Bye-bye.